All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. This NBA season began with very high expectations for the Milwaukee Bucks, but they're heading home in the early stages of the month of May. For the second consecutive year, the Bucks could not get out of the first round in spite of the fact that they had championship aspirations. Milwaukee was short-handed in their series versus the Indiana Pacers as this veteran-laden team could not keep up with the young Pacers. Not having Giannis Antetokounmpo hurt big time because we're talking about one of the best players in the NBA, and we're also talking about a two-time MVP. Now, don't get me wrong; any team that didn't have the services of their best player would be at a huge disadvantage. And of course, the Milwaukee Bucks fell into that category. Then, of course, just adding on for the Bucks, Damian Lillard being injured and missing time as well. You go back to game number four, having Bobby Portis get ejected early on in that contest didn't help. Of course, Milwaukee went on to lose that game. But honestly, at the end of the day, the Bucks' issues, in my opinion, were much deeper than just the injuries to Dame and Giannis late in the season. You go back to this Milwaukee team, and I questioned it all along. They fired Adrian Griffin after the 30-13 start. And if you're talking about it not being a fit, I just blame the front office for that because clearly, if you got to fire a guy after 43 games and a winning record, you have the best record in the East, and Adrian Griffin was actually in line to coach the Eastern Conference All Stars for the All Star game. Then I blame the front office because clearly the guy wasn't a fit with his style and his team style, and I think at the end of the day, you didn't do your due diligence. So that falls in the front office right there. I question bringing in Doc Rivers mid-season because not to say that Doc is not a good coach, it's just the fact that it's very tough bringing in a guy from outside of the organization mid-season. He's going to come in with his style, and now you're asking both head coach and players to get acclimated to each other on the fly. And it was a disaster waiting to happen. All season long, Milwaukee was not a good defensive team, regardless if it was Adrian Griffin or Doc Rivers as their head coach. They were one of the worst defensive teams in the league all season. They had trouble on the perimeter, and Milwaukee had issues defending the perimeter all season long. And we saw that with that speed of the Indiana Pacers throughout this series because those young Pacers ran the Bucks off the court. To me, I said it before, and I'm going to continue to say it. Milwaukee pushed the panic button after last season's surprising first round loss to the Miami Heat. Remember, Giannis was hurt in that series to begin as well, and they lost to Miami in 5 games. After that, we saw Milwaukee fire Mike Budenholzer, and I think Mike Budenholzer and the Bucks kind of fit like a glove. And then on top of that, trading Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard, basically. And at the end of the day, Drew Holiday really fit with the Bucks because he's more of a point guard than Dame. He's a better defensive player than Damian Lillard is, but Milwaukee sacrificed that for the offensive output rather that Damian Lillard can give you over a Drew Holiday. To me, you look at the Bucks; they are a veteran team, and they have some serious questions to answer. Now, I know, okay, and I'm not going to admit this because it's a fact. The injury bug has really gotten the best of Milwaukee over the last 3 seasons. You go back to 2022, the Bucks were rolling. And had Chris Middleton not gotten hurt in the playoffs that year, I really do feel like Milwaukee would have repeated as NBA champions. Then, of course, the Giannis injury in round one last year to Miami. And then, of course, Giannis getting hurt just prior to the start of the playoffs. And then, of course, it was just added on with Damian Lillard and Chris Middleton being injured as well. So you look at next season, you've got a veteran laden team. And now Doc Rivers is going to get a full training camp and a full off season to put this team together in his vision, if you will. But the Bucks have some serious cap questions, and it's going to be interesting to see, if they're going to be willing to deal with that additional cap apron because you look at it, both Giannis and Dame are set to make about 50 million a piece next season. Chris Middleton over 30, Brooke Lopez over 23 in the final year of his contract. Okay, so these are some big time numbers that we're talking about. You're not moving Giannis, you're not moving Dame, of course. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the Bucks do over the summer to try to keep this thing going. Milwaukee right now is still one of the top teams in the East if they're healthy. Okay. But at the end of the day, I really felt, coming into the season, I said the East was going to be between Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Boston. And of course, Philadelphia is done in large part due to the injuries to Joel Embiid. Of course, I could say the same thing with Milwaukee with Giannis, but nonetheless, I took Milwaukee out of that championship equation once they moved on from Adrian Griffin in favor of Doc Rivers midseason. Not saying that they can't win a championship with Doc, but like I said, it's very difficult to transition from one head coach to another, especially when you're bringing that other head coach in from outside of the organization midseason. That is a tough ask. At the end of the day, the defense, Milwaukee has to get better. Okay, on that side of the basketball, you look at this series alone to Indiana. In the two games that Milwaukee won, okay, they held Indiana under 100 points. If you look at the four games that Milwaukee lost, they gave up at least 120 points in each contest to the Pacers. And of course, I know game three they lost, but that contest went to overtime. But nonetheless, Milwaukee was not able to make those key defensive stops. At the end of the day, you can have all of the sizzle that you want on offense, but if guys are not healthy, and if you don't have a team that can play good defense, especially good perimeter defense in today's National Basketball Association, it is going to really hinder your chances to make the playoffs. Clearly, if Giannis and Dame were healthy, we're probably not having this conversation as far as the Bucks losing to the Pacers. However, this was still a flawed team, and it was going to catch up to them at some point in the Eastern Conference Finals. But nonetheless, the offseason has begun quicker than expected for the Bucks, quicker than they really wanted it to. But nonetheless, it's back to the drawing board as they look to once again try to find the recipe for that championship formula. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.